Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Red Sky Pods Meets Episode 2. And tonight we're joined by a local lad and esteemed actor from Hollyoaks and similar things like that, Kent Riley. It's not the first time Ian and I have met Kent, probably about 6 months ago, maybe longer. We had a bit of a chat on another podcast show. It's always a pleasure to have him on. Got some good opinions, and I hope you'll enjoy them too. So, welcome, Kent.
Thank you for having me on, boys.
No worries, mate. And hello again, Ian.
All right there, Steve. Okay.
Yeah. So what we'll do, we'll start a little bit on you, Kent, because obviously it's been some time since we spoke to you, and I'm sure you've been busy. I know we're in lockdown and bubbles and all that stuff, but we've all got to work, mate. So really, just a bit of a couple of minutes hearing from you what you're up to and what we might want to watch you in going forward, mate.
Well, like you said, it's been quite a testing time for everyone. So no more so than the acting business, really. So it's been a little bit quieter than usual. I finished something just before April last year. See, everything standstill, and then I've had like a few little meetings, a little bit different to the way we obviously, traveling down to London no more. So it's a lot of it self-tape stuff, which I'm accustomed to anyway. I think the industry moving a bit more in that direction as it is. So auditions basically on tape that you film yourself, which are good because you get time, to go back to take it, but bad because you don't have the conversation with the people in the room who sometimes can find out a bit more about what they did in terms of performance and stuff like that. What you find sometimes is you can go off on your own little tangent when you're on your own, and you're focusing on a certain way of performing it, and it may not be anything like the. That's where being in the room and having a conversation is a little bit better. But I think the beauty of having a self tape, which is where we've been for the last best part of a year now, is having the luxury of time to have a look back, critique it, maybe do it again until you can send something that you're happy with. But yeah, I've had a good little run, good auditions, waiting on kind of another one in the pipeline that I think was going well. But I think the other thing we've encountered is with, people and stuff is stuff looking like it may go ahead or being having the go ahead and then stop because, stuff happened and it's all spoiled. So, I mean, the sooner everything kind of goes back to a bit more of normality, the better, specifically for, like the acting. I know there is, there's productions running and have been for a while, but from all accounts, everything that's in place is kind of only really slowing, some of the processes down. So I'd say that the quicker it goes back to normal, the better. But as I said, the thing I finished before the lockdown, I think I mentioned 2 years, I'm still waiting for it to be kind of confirmed. I did see them on Sky with guys with Intergalactic, which is a kind of futurist.
I remember.
Yeah. So that's due out, kind of, which is I'm looking forward to seeing because the bits are done and obviously what other bits that are there about. It sounds like it's going to be an interesting one and certainly one to watch. Like.
So everybody's suffering. With a professional cricketer on last week. Lad who's played for Ireland against England and stuff, and it was interesting to get his take on things. Cricket's not quite the same bubble as football, but certainly a bit of interesting feedback. So, of the things you've been doing and the auditions you've been sending off, mate, have you got anything that really stood out for you? Do you ever get offered football stuff, being a lad from Liverpool or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends, doesn't it? What's being paid and whatnot. But I mean, the frustration you have, certainly from my point of view, is hearing about everything and getting put up for the stuff that you would be right for. Obviously my agent, a really good, and she's doing well for me. But there's some things that you may hear about, doesn't hear about till later down the line. Obviously, something you've got to keep as much as your agent. Obviously, make sure that you get the maximum opportunities. I think it is a lot to do with keeping your ear to the ground as well and making sure that you're always in the when stuff's happening. So footy stuff, it kind of, it's weird Because from kind of an intrinsic point of view, I love to do stuff that's like, something I'm really, really interested in, like, as you say, footy. But at the same time, I feel like that's a little bit, you'd end up pigeonholed a little bit.
Yeah.
A lad from Liverpool, it's like I'd rather move away from that, in terms of idealistic roles, doing something that's not anything like, what I am and who I've grew up to become. In terms of my
Yeah, I just asked because I remember growing up, there's things like Scully and that on the telly, and that was Andrew Schofield and things. And I'm not saying you should make a remake of Scully or anything, mate. I'm sure he'd be very good. I'm sure he'd be very good, but
I think he passed with a 16-year-old, Kent.
He did, didn't he?
So, yeah. And then there was another one summer that was pretty cool as well with Morrissey and David Morrissey. That was pretty cool.
Yeah,
That's really going back a bit now. So yeah, football wise, obviously we never could have believed between when we spoke to you and now how the wheels would have come off our season and where we would find ourselves, because I can remember when we spoke last time, you saying, and it was a very good point you made, that we stopped romancing about winning things and being shocked at being where we'd got to, and that we were in contention for things and we'd actually become serial winners. And it was a total change in the mindset of the club. And I thought that was a really good point. And it kind of leads me into talking about this season. So Ian and I talked this to death, mate. Absolutely talked the back legs off it. So just kind of get an idea from you. What's your take on this season and where we're at, and a little bit what contributes to that to some degree?
Well, I say this, with, it's not tongue in cheek, but with a sense of irony that I know that it'd be used against me when speaking to any of my mates who are Blues or anyone else that doesn't support Liverpool. I feel like obviously the main fact is the main one, losing your first choice centre halves and then your backup centre halves. That's the main. But I feel like even looking back to the tail end of last season, I know that we'd already won the league, but I feel like we really do more than other clubs. Now, we've always had a reputation, certainly on the big occasion when it demands a performance, that we're 12th man to the 12th man. I feel like there's teams and clubs that benefit more than others from fans being in the stadium. So certainly looking at the way we play and the way Klopp is intrinsically geared, it's all about intensity with us as a football team. And I feel like without fans, it can only go on so long before the intensity just naturally drops.
Yeah.
Between that and you can't beat around the bush. It's been an absolute. I think they're the two main factors. And then looking at more, which I've done loads of times, and others, looking how we ended up really kind of malfunctioning as a team was, looking to get. When we worked at our best, we were a unit where everyone had their role and everyone almost with telepathically. Once you lose your Van Dijk, your Gomez, then Fabinho drops into the centre, all them components are all over the place. So there's nothing that really is tuned. But then you lost Henderson as well. Now, Henderson does a lot of work on the right side with Salah and Trent. So they do sometimes little triangles with them and they'll work around that to see if Trent pushes forward, Henderson will cover them.
Yeah.
Loads of different little components of how the team functions just went to fuck. Excuse me, language. Because
that's all right.
Because there was no one was in the other roles. Now, the first understanding was playing Fabinho centre half was, I think, two things in it. Obviously, but also the way we can play out from the back. They wanted someone, obviously, who can move the ball from the back, which obviously he's got that in his locker. But then you lost obviously someone who can do his lateral cross the back four covering from midfield, and just all the things. But I think the main one being obviously injury. But no fans has played a massive part when it comes to actually the on-field intensity of the team. So long you can keep a level up with nothing to respond to. Some other teams have benefited from no fans. Some other teams have been able to kind of be a little bit more, kind of comfortable playing their game without the maybe demands of fans. So between all them things and VAR, not that I make an excuse for VAR, although we've been done over, I think all them things, it just felt a little bit in terms of the season's gone on, a little bit like, and I said it the other day, when we've been winning, I haven't really felt as I would. And then getting beat, not really that as bothered as it should be.
Yeah.
Season's felt a little bit like it's just gone really like, I don't know, it doesn't for me feel like, it sounds stupid, for the fans of the Champions League. It just doesn't feel like a real season.
No, it's surreal, isn't it? It's all surreal. It doesn't feel right. I think you're right about the fans in many aspects. I don't think the fans would have allowed us to play the way we did against City, for instance, at home in the second half. We just capitulated with 54,000 or whatever it is at the minute. I don't know the exact number. Liverpool fans in there. You don't lose 6 games on the spin at home. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Question for you, and this is my view. Around Christmas time, Klopp became very negative when he was doing interviews with media, particularly with the to do with the schedule. I'm a believer that football teams represent their manager and their manager's demeanour. Now, Klopp is an intense guy. He's a 100%er. He's all heart, and we were an intense team, 100%er with all heart.
It's fueled from emotion, isn't it? But we're fueled.
And basically, they're mirroring him. They mirrored the way he behaved, the way he was in the press, is my opinion. I'm into the psychology and all that stuff. I like to understand all that and think about it, read about it, look at it. Tottenham are a representation of Mourinho.
Yeah.
Guardiola, his team, are a representation of him. You could go back to history. They're all the same. Alex Ferguson's Man United sides are a representation of him. Yeah. We went from having this crazy mad German bloke who we all love to bits, running up and down the line, fist pumping, jumping up and down, to a guy that basically stood with his hand in his pocket with the weight of the world on his shoulders. And I genuinely believe, and I'm happy for someone to correct me, that had an impact on the team. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree. I think, ironically, though, I do think that probably falls in line with what was happening with his mum sadly passing away as well. So, I mean, it's probably quite easily explained in terms of his kind of change in attitude and as you say, the weight of the world on his shoulders. And there's no doubt about it. It translated through into the actual squad. But I think what's funny is that, and you're right, I do think there's been a shift, and obviously he's been through an absolute devastating time. But I think with all the things that we've just touched upon, and the passing of his mum, sadly, losing, all your centre halves that you normally have in the team, losing the fans, obviously the main one of his losing his mum, and VAR really being up against us in terms of the we've had. It felt a little bit like there was no real enjoyment at that time. He was getting it. Obviously, it's a challenge, and he spoke about that. And I loved his kind of response. It was a response of like, no, this is the challenging bit when you're up against it. But it didn't feel like there was much enjoyment going on, which can happen, obviously. And I just think, all things considered, I feel like there was probably a point, and I think the Champions League welcomed him. There's probably a point where it looked like the season be done. Just get the.
Absolutely, mate. I agree. I think it's one of those situations where he's a man who bestows hugs on anyone who wants one. Probably could have done with one himself, couldn't he, at certain times during that period? Yeah. So, in fact, I did feel for the guy. He's a. How can you go from being a man who wears your heart on your sleeve to dealing with that? And I know he's a devout Christian, so losing his mum would have been huge. And you made a valid point there. So just looking at the playing squad and things that have happened, and Ian will recall we did a show recently on Thiago, and generally the jury's out on Thiago a little bit, and not necessarily his fault, obviously, with the injuries. We played in positions we didn't want to play him in games we probably didn't want to play him in. Terms of the sort of 2/3 of the way through the season, and having spoken to you about things before, what's your assessment of Thiago in this season and his performances?
Well, I put it out there not long ago. I'd seen Carragher. I'd kind of spoke about something with regards to Thiago, and my response was kind of mirroring what was kind of getting said. Is the reason and the function we bought Thiago for, we've very rarely seen. So what we wanted from him, as far as I can kind of interpret, what Pep Linders had spoke about, is that other dimension, a little bit unpredictability from, certainly from a midfield point of view, who can do them passes and kind of keep dictate the play, but influence it in a way, certainly where, just do a low block where you can get past them and somehow way through around or through. He was getting and has been for most of the season to do kind of two other jobs that were not really what his strength are. Yeah. Now I know he can play as a deep line defensive midfielder playmaker type, but as I said before, he's not the type of person who can run laterally across the back four and put fires, so to speak, protecting the back four. That's not how to play. If you were going to play him deep, it'd almost be like the way Pirlo played in the past. But that's not where his strengths lie. He's also not played for most part in a fully functioning midfield. I mean, what can change? And I don't know, when you buy players, obviously you've got an idea where they're going to play and how they're going to play, who they're going to play with. Ideally, for me, Thiago, Henderson, Fabinho, or Thiago, Wijnaldum, Fabinho. That's kind of where I would see the main Thiago going forward, and I think we have seen it glimpses, but I just think overall, in terms of, when you say the jury's out, I know what you mean in terms of it's not being for him, but in terms of him himself, I think he'll understand that it's not about it's not performance levels. He's literally just not been able to play a game thus far. I think since Fabinho went back into midfield, I think you've already seen a far better, version of Thiago, and one closer to what the person we bought, basically. But it's frustrating. It's certainly frustrating because as in terms of a football, someone to watch, he's absolutely brilliant and lovely to watch. So pleasing on the eye. He just hasn't been able to get going into his kind of role in the team, because the teams, as I said before, it's not being fully functional by any means. So again, another reason I think a lot of season over. Let's get everyone back on.
Just jumping in there, Steve. In hindsight, Kent, do you think it was a mistake playing Fabinho as centre half? Do you think we should have just gone with two centre halves and kept Fabinho in midfield when he was fit?
Well, I did say then, I think part of the reason to play it there was to have one from the back and play out from the back. I think that was the idea behind it. And actually, if we're honest, when he first played there, we were all like, oh, this is good. You know what I mean? So I think hindsight's easy to just go, oh, you know what? But, and actually, looking at it now, I think a better option would have been, this sounds a bit mad, is playing Henderson at centre half. Because then you'd still have Fabinho in front of Henderson and Wijnaldum and Thiago, and you've got Henderson who can still play out from the back and seem quite astute defensively. So again, that's hindsight. looking at it now, you'd have probably been, I don't know, but only managers, it might have been a better option to just play Henderson in the back four, keep Fabinho in his position, and play Ronaldo, which still is quite complimentary. So
it's funny you should say that because Ian's been a big advocate of leaving Fabinho in midfield. Yeah. It's almost been a weekly conversation with Ian on our pod. And you know what? The first thing you said there is when he brought Fabinho back into the midfield, he kind of gave Thiago, to some degree, a little bit more freedom.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we've spoken about is we're playing on the stretch at the moment because we don't trust the back four. We don't push the back four up the field very far. And in doing that, we're not pushing the midfield towards the front men, so it's all become a bit disjointed. And when it breaks down badly, doesn't it? And you see Thiago trying to chase back, and it doesn't work. So I think you're exactly right. We didn't buy him to do the things he's doing at the moment. Personally speaking, and we discussed this on the pod, if anyone watching wants to check that out, it's pretty cool. I think we bought him not to play as many games as he had, and to come on with half an hour to go when we're beating the team 2-0 or 2-1, to stretch the game and to make 2-1, 4-1, because he had enough ability on the ball to exploit the spaces teams would be trying to chase the game. Someone brought an interesting stat. He never plays more than 20-odd games a season, and he never has. And maybe that's the way that Liverpool saw him. So it's an interesting one. We certainly haven't seen the best of him. We haven't seen the best of Liverpool since lockdown came back. It's kind of like we got to the point where we lifted the trophy, and then everybody breathed out, relaxed, and they've forgotten how to get that intensity. We talk about mental fatigue. When you're chasing a big pot of silver, like Liverpool, where mental fatigue goes out the window, and you'll find that extra 10%. When you get over the crest of the hill, and you get to the top of Everest or whatever you're doing, and you stick your flag in the snow, all that momentum disappears with that singular moment. So it's really hard to reinvent yourselves and go again. And it's been a rough thing.
Do you know what? That's a perfect way of putting it. Ironically, though, I do think the start of the season we were geared towards really going again and really going at it until the injuries hit. And I think the mental fatigue really hit us when we realised we were so depleted. So, and I think what I mean by that is having such a close, it's not a massive squad, and I think it's always alluded the Klopp doesn't want a massive squad. I think we want, that close-knit kind of togetherness. But I think the blow, the knock-on effect that has is when you lose someone certainly as big as Van Dijk, it's a massive blow to the squad. Someone of his quality, can't be a blow to any squad. But I think because it's not a massive squad, you really feel it. I mean, the reason I say that is the comparable is people, use the or excuse last season that Man City didn't really compare us because they lost Laporte. But there's no way that it's even the same, comparison in the sense of actually they didn't. This is the other thing. Last season they didn't have other defenders. They didn't replace Kompany. But the point is, in the majority of cases, certainly with City, they've got a big enough squad that it's not a massive loss as it is with Liverpool. Do you know what I mean? And so with as you say, getting to the Holy Grail basically and us winning the league, I do think there was a sense of right, let's go full pelt at this again. The first moment he realised he's gone for the season, it was a massive blow that I actually think the mental fatigue hit when we got without Van Dijk. You know what I mean?
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. Something that was like a train, didn't it? It knocked the stuffing completely out of us. So looking at this season, obviously it looks like we're going to lose Ronaldo, which for me is a blow because he's been a sort of a marker of consistency this year, and Klopp has come out and said that. Are you sad to see him go? Do you think we should have made the effort to keep him?
Well, I had a debate with my brother, and I think it's not a debate as such because I don't disagree with him. He thinks it's stupid that we've not really offered. I mean, we don't know the term, but not basically given what he's asked for, which in part I understand. At the same time, though, what I do always say is I feel like, and unless we've just gone mad. I feel like they've got a plan, regardless, Liverpool. So I feel like they'll have anticipated that, you know, there's going to be negotiating going on with Ronaldo, but we're not going to budge on what we're offering. If he doesn't accept that, then they've got a plan going forward. Now,
I hope so, yeah.
as my brother said, oh, it doesn't, you know, you've got to replace him, and you know, how do you know that? I think the main issue I've got with losing Wijnaldum is that one of the biggest assets a footballer can give you now is his availability, and it's always there, always available. So it's finding someone not only of a similar quality, but who was always available. Because you look at your other midfielders. I mean, look at Thiago, as you said, he's only plays 20 odd games. Look at he's injured every time. Henderson's hit 30, and he's had a few little injuries in the past. I can't see that being, you know, that you can, you know, over rely on. Fabinho has a little knock from time to time. So you look at it and go, well, you've got to replace him, but you've got to replace him with someone that's going to be ready to play all the time. That's hard. Saying that, you know, as I said, I don't know the terms. I mean, what seems to have been all the issue of not being able to agree a deal? Is it the length
so
of time?
Not long after we spoke to you the first time. Yeah. It's not long after we spoke to you the first time. We had a journalist on solely works around Liverpool Football Club. He kind of said it's the length of the agreement that Ronaldo was looking for, and suggested it was kind of looking for a 3, maybe a 4-year deal. So Jamie sort of put this across quite well when Jamie spoke about it. He said at 30, he's 120 grand a week every week. Right up to 32, 33, he will contribute what he's contributing now. And then he might fall off a cliff because he catches up with everybody. And then you've got a 34-year-old, 125 grand a week, that in essence is another Dirk Kuyt, because Dirk Kuyt was on silly money when he ended his career at Liverpool, and he wasn't contributing what we'd come to expect. So what do we do? My view is that we give him a 2-year deal at 120 grand a week, which is a 50 grand pay rise. Let's be honest, 70 grand a week for a player of that magnitude that's contributed that much to the football club, you're getting him on the cheap. Give him 120 for 2 years with an option for a 3rd year. That option sits with the club and not the player. And I think that would have got him over the line.
Yeah, probably. Well, listen, I mean, I think the thing you look at is the other thing from a club's point of view. You can't bend when it comes to certain kind of standards within the club, because from a principal point of view, that gets looked at. Well, they've done it for Wijnaldum. You'd have X, Y, and Z looking for similar deals then, and then that's where I imagine you can get in trouble, because you want to keep hold of your players, but you're going, well, you've done this for him. You know, I want the same deal. So I don't know. I think that, you know, there's more to it than we kind of probably know about, and obviously, as I said, the length of time is probably sounds like the main factor, but it'll be sad to see him go. You know, he's definitely, without a question, a Liverpool legend.
I was going to ask you that. That was my next question. Is he a legend or not?
He's 100% legend.
I agree.
You know, just looking, before we got to the Champions League final, he got us back in the Champions League.
Yeah.
That goal against Middlesbrough, wasn't it?
Yeah. He got us back, and then, you know, the goals in the lead up to, obviously, the main one, obviously the Barcelona game. But even the year before, when we got to the final, he scored away from Roma, didn't he?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I don't think we should be letting him go. I think you've got to spend a lot of money to buy a player that can do that. I've seen the list of salaries that the Liverpool players are on. You look at Trent. How on earth is Trent only on 40 grand a week? So you're quite right. That would be a conversation that would all be queued up outside the manager's door, wouldn't they, with their agents looking for a pay rise. So it's a good point, and I think we all recognise as Liverpool fans that FSG are in this for the business side of it, not to speculate and throw silly money at things.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll have to hope that the last conversation we have gets them over the line, because I can't imagine that the Koeman's in particular great favourite at Barcelona at the moment. If he was to lose his job, the Dutch connection's gone, the one that Ronaldo was looking at, and potentially he might sit down and have another conversation. So until I see it, because it's all over social media, one week he's agreed a contract, the next week and then Sunday, the Sunday Times announced he decided to go to Barca. Until he or the club comes out and announces it, I'll hang on to that little bit of hope that we can get him over the line.
I think, to be honest with you, I feel like although it is leaking in the, and I don't know, we don't know if it's truth or whether, you know, I feel like the fact that it has actually been like definitely confirmed, and maybe it is a little bit of hope. I feel like that maybe just still a bit of room to maybe, you know, to negotiate still. Maybe there is still an opportunity to do a deal with him, because, you know, it is, you know what I mean? If he doesn't think, I mean, he's probably got something in place. I don't think he's probably got something in place, but I think it is, and he's not able to agree, because I don't even know if, looking at it now, I guess it's a new challenge for him, but I don't know why. I know it's Barcelona as well, but they're not in great shape whatsoever. You go there.
I know, mate. I know, but it must be, you know, it must be similar for an actor. You got offered something you didn't really want, but it would look great on your resume come the end of your career. You might do it, mightn't you? And the Cruyff factor with Barcelona is Johan Cruyff was indoctrinated into all of these young Dutch players coming through, and to be honest with you, Ronaldo, that won't be lost on him. So it's interesting that maybe he just wants to go and be a part of that Dutch Barcelona connection that has unfolded over the years with the likes of Reisinger and Cocu and players like that. The Ball brothers and stuff, and Koeman, who've been there himself as a player. Scored a winning free kick in a Champions League final at Hampden, Wembley, or something, I think it was. So I can see it, but I don't understand it, because actually just today with the announcement that FFP is going to be fired off, suddenly Barcelona are billionaires again. So you never know, do you? You know what I mean? It's like jobs for the boys and money for the boys in Spain. They're getting all brushed under the carpet, don't they? So maybe that will make them not look at him and look at somebody else, because the financial constraints are off a little bit, and just had a new president and what have you. So there's interesting times ahead at Barcelona.
Well, is Memphis Depay, is he still kind of heavily linked? Because apparently they're good friends, aren't they, as well?
Yeah.
You don't know whether
you can't say Memphis. You get blocked on Twitter for that.
What was that about, by the way? What was it?
Oh, God only knows. God only knows. I didn't bother, mate. I saw it.
There was a configuration on Twitter. There was a mistake on Twitter, because Twitter apologised about it. That for some reason, if you typed in Memphis, it just got blocked. Did someone have turned on something that if you typed in Memphis, it just automatically blocked you? And Twitter apologised.
I think there's more to it than that. We'll never know, but I think there's more to it than that. I think it was a code where at some point was and being flagged up.
Could be.
Right,
it'd be very 2021 if that was the case.
Exactly.
It's like these 5G vaccines we're getting out. Will be robot controlled, you know what I mean? So I've had one. I had a vaccine on Sunday, so yeah. Hopefully I'll be all right going forward.
They're tracking you now.
Yeah, that's it. I can get BBC too, mate. All by myself. Right, so that's well on that. That was a good chat, that. So thanks for that. So what we'll do is we'll go through your 11 now, but when we just won't go bang, 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 bang. We'll stop and talk about those players, and me and Ian might throw a few alternatives at you. So you know, so it's interactive, and the three of us are involved. Mm-hmm. So obviously you had a little bit of time to think about this, and I know you were like, "Ooh, wow, I've got to do that." A bit of consternation. We know Stevie McManaman's going to be there, because you nominated him as your favourite player, didn't you, when we had the chat?
He's my favourite player growing up. He was my favourite player growing up.
Are you telling me he hasn't made your team?
Yeah, he has. No, he has. No, but I have to make that clear, because he was my favourite player in terms of me getting into footy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there's other players that I know of it better than McManaman. You know what
I mean? That's fair. He's not your favourite commentator, though, is he?
No. He's a whopper, isn't he? He's a proper whopper sometimes, like PC Sport, isn't he?
It's weird, though. feel like it must be frustrating because I don't know whether you get so kind of probably lack of a better phrase, institutionalized when you're in that kind of domain. I feel like sometimes he half knows himself. Oh, what am I saying?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? No.
You know what? Just before we go into the team, I've been listening to podcasts in the car because it's about 35 minutes to and from work. I've been listening to the Greatest Game, Jamie Carragher's podcast, and he had Tony Bellew on there, and it was like two Evertonians having a conversation. And I was sitting there in the car thinking, that's nailed it. I know exactly what's going on with Sky now. This is two blue noses having a conversation. This isn't a Liverpool fan and an Everton fan. Jamie Carragher is still an Everton fan, so he's outed himself there, boys. So onto your team. I'll throw this one at you. Who's your manager? Had to put a manager on your team. Who are you going with?
Easy. You pick
Easy.
that.
Yeah. But everybody says that, to be fair. I did when I did mine on another podcast some couple of months ago. What formation did you go with?
It would be like a 4-4-2 diamond.
With an attacking and a defensive midfielder.
Interesting.
That's a FIFA formation, that, you know, friends. You know what to be doing.
And so it's a narrow diamond, two strikers, one behind them.
Sound right? Okay. So between the sticks, what was your choice and why?
Alisson. Now, I had a conversation with my dad today. I am aware that Ray Clemens is probably our best ever goalie in terms of stats and all that, but because I don't recall him, I hate just saying Ray Clemens because it's like it feels a little bit fraudulent. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm well aware. You know what I mean? Like I'm well aware he was probably our best goalkeeper ever, but I didn't see him, so I'm not just going to say him because I know he was good. Do you know what I mean? I'm thinking about the players that I've seen, and it's definitely Alisson.
I get where you're coming from. I did see Clemens play for sort of last 4 years of his Liverpool career because my first game at Anfield was when we put 7 past Spurs, including that zigzag goal. When said, do you know what? From that moment on, mate, I was fucked. That was it. That was it for me. No coming back from that game, I tell you. Clemens is the barometer that we in future years will measure Alisson against. Personally speaking, but for the sort of last half a dozen games when he's looked like a man bereft of confidence, I think he was on his way to being involved in the same conversation as Clemens. Hopefully, we'll get back to there. There's no reason why we shouldn't. He's got everything. For a big guy who don't have to move his feet quick to get to things, it's staggering to watch. So I agree with you. What a goalkeeper that is, and when he's confident and when all his things are going for him, he is the best goalkeeper in the world. And I don't just say that as a Liverpool fan. I say that as a football fan.
I think that the main reason I would argue that is because often, probably more often this season, but more often than not, he doesn't have an awful lot to do. And when you've got goalies who don't really do much but can spring into life at any moment, aren't they, when they haven't had anything to do all game and there's 2 chances and they're both they're both chances, real gilt-edged chances, and these both chances. They're the keepers, and I think he's probably the most obvious choice when it comes to that. Someone may not be called upon for 85, and they have 2 big. They're the best keepers for me.
And he doesn't let you down with that, does he? Remember Dries Mertens saving the Champions League where he comes off his elbow or something. That's the fine lines between not even being in the competition and winning it. Yeah. So, I think you're absolutely spot on there, mate. So, I would agree. The full-backs, so we'll start on the left this time. We'll go a bit against what people normally say. Who's your left-back?
Well, again, it's based on, who can I recall playing. And I think it's quite easy, again, this. Because I ended up saying to my dad, so I wonder how many now would get in now. How many are going to be at the team? So my left back's Robbo.
What did your dad say, Alan Kennedy?
Yeah, but I said, was Alan Kennedy better than Robertson? And he actually said no. Don't think he was.
See, I was always of the opinion that he was because of longevity and amount of trophies. And then I started to say to myself, well, you can't really say that because that's a bit shit, really, isn't it? Saying just because he won a trophy.
But the trophy one is always one that kind of when you have other opposing fans of different. I think it's a cop out argument. It's like it's the Scholes Gerrard argument. How many league titles is Gerrard? Mean nothing. Do you know what I mean? So, and I get your point with regards to you've got to be good if you're winning all the trophies. But I think. Again, I can't really recall loads of Alan Kennedy. I've seen clips and I know, not well aware of obviously. But I just think looking at Robbo, he's a modern day fullback, and you look at someone like that, you could ask him to do the job that Robbo does. You know what I mean?
That's I agree, and that's a conversation we're having now. It's nip and tuck between the two for me because obviously I'm older than you guys, so I've seen a lot more of the sort of the halcyon days, shall we call it, when we won everything, and football was so very, very different, and they just got pissed up and played five-a-side and won everything, mate. That's what they did. But now things have changed and science has come in, and I think you're right. I think you can have a conversation to say those two are the upper echelons of Liverpool left back. So I'd have no qualms with Andy Robbo going in there, mate. He's absolutely tremendous, and what a signing that was for that kind of money. So on to your right side, your right back. He's smiling, so I know what you're going to say now.
It feels like for me that's another easy one, and I mean that genuinely. Like I don't think we had loads of good right backs in my like who I can recall. Do you know what I mean? Like who I can remember playing.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, again, go back to yesteryear.
Yeah.
And Trent will always be measured by the older football Liverpool fans against Phil Neal, the most decorated Liverpool player of all time, who won 4 Champions Cups.
And I do again when you look at like the profile of the player, again, it can't be seen to be in any way discrediting Phil Neal. No. I do feel like when you look at the product, it's like chalk and cheese. What they, and I think it's the way the modern game's on. What them fullbacks are asked to do every game is almost crazy in terms of the getting up and down. Now I know, you always had your left and right back getting up and down. Super important the wingers back in the day, but they are wingers. These fullbacks are like wingers, and they still have to defend. In terms of their contribution wise, I mean, Trent more so, or not more so. It's pretty close, aren't they, in terms of their assist, him and Robbo. But just looking at the ability level and what got to the game, and again, it's not to feel like I'm just Phil Neal. But there's no way I'd pick Phil Neal in a Liverpool 11. Certainly with regards to what I know, still develop as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's fine. I mean, Trent's a number 10 in a number 2 shirt, isn't he? Really, if you look at it, that's what he is. So, central defenders wise, one of these is going to be pretty obvious. It'll come from the current squad, I'm sure. So do that one first, because I'm interested to know you're going to partner everybody. If I did this with every Liverpool fan on the planet, everybody says Virgil van Dijk. I don't suppose you're going to be any different.
No.
So do that one first and give us your thoughts, and then we'll see who you're partnering with. That will be where it gets interesting.
Well, there's 2 things at play here, because the first one is it is Virgil van Dijk. I don't really think I have to explain myself on that one. I think everyone who's tuning in and watching, who's any type of Liverpool fan, understands full well that he's probably in modern time the best centre half we've had. Now his partner, I feel like his a first generation version of him is Alan Hansen. So I feel like Van Dijk is the kind of the modern day Alan Hansen. He was the first generation. He was the first iPhone, and Van Dijk the new ones. You know what I mean? But in terms of them playing, I know they're pretty similar. So I don't know whether you'd encounter issues in terms of if you're trying to build an 11, like so hard to beat. They both, I think Alan Hansen probably more so than Van Dijk, like to carry the ball forward and whatnot. And they're both quite similar in terms of their style. They're quite relaxed. They were quite, composed. Didn't really break too much in terms of doing a lot of chasing down. That said, I think they're both, Van Dijk is that. I think Alex was that good. That I think you could play them and just be confident in the fact that no one's getting past them. They read the game too well. There's no need.
You could play Alan Hansen alongside my mum, and he'd still be the best central defender we've ever had, because he's just got that appreciation of football. So, whilst you're right, by the way, but for me, Van Dijk's the best central defender I've ever seen. Never mind, wore a Liverpool shirt.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with Vincent Kompany when he says that Van Dijk's, by some distance, the best central defender the Premier League's ever had. The guy has no weakness. It's like I'm expected to find out he's not human or something, he's a robot or something like that, because it's silly, isn't it, how good he is? That thing with Connolly from Brighton when they're both sprinting to the ball, he does the back end and runs around the back. Fancy even thinking about that, even thinking about doing it.
You know what makes me laugh about that when I watch it again? Have you look as he passes it? He does a no-look pass,
Yes, he does. And then a little smear. Love it. It's arrogance, mate, but it's beautiful to watch, isn't it?
Yeah. But him and Hansen genuinely, I think, would be like, you read the game so well. I don't know how you'd get, because there's no need for someone to be. When you've got like a partnership and it's the obvious kind of cliche, all playing centre half and a dogged, a dog of war. I just think the pair of them would read it so well.
I completely agree with you, mate. Good
and
shout.
They both do the dirty stuff as well. They weren't just both.
The slide dirty stuff.
Both do the dirty stuff as well.
Hansen admits he didn't like it up. And quick story for you. There was a player played for Oxford called Billy Whitehurst, who was one of the hardest players ever. Graham Souness would worry about going head to head with him and that saying something. Turned up at Anfield with 9 staples in his head from a previous game. And Hansen, by his own admission, said to Lawrence, I want no part of him. He's your man. I don't like it. Don't like it. He's yours. So there's a difference. Jockey was amazing, mate. Just what a fantastic footballer. And sitting alongside Van Dijk, you could actually stick the 2 fullbacks up front and you'd still be boss, wouldn't you? There wouldn't be any problems.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Alisson in goal, Robbo, Trent, Hansen, and Van Dijk. Do we need to do any more? They'd win everything anyway, wouldn't they? Right, so in midfield, I assume you're sitting a deep layer in your midfield, a deeper player. Who are you going for there?
Xabi Alonso.
A lovely player. What a lovely player he was.
I feel like he's someone, obviously, certainly in front of that back four as well. I don't think you'd necessarily have to do loads of work defensively. Certainly with who else got in the team. But I feel, what it was under was his defensive work. He absolutely, again, reading the game so well.
Yeah.
Used to be able to intercept. No one really knows that about Alonso. But I'd have to figure it out. But I think that the 2 of the so many seasons he had the most interceptions in the league.
Yeah.
So however many seasons he played, was it maybe 5 or 5 seasons?
Yeah. I think he left in his 5th season, if memory serves me.
But the 2 or 3 of them he had the league because read the game so well. He'd move over, step in, dictate the obviously the pace of the game, but also kind of the feel of the game. What I loved about Alonso, he could make you feel really comfortable with watching us. But sometimes you watch a team, even your own team, and I can't think of one off the head of your team, frantic or a little bit kind of like chaotic. Even Haley Klopp had that a little bit, like really. As much as it's boss, I don't feel calm watching us. I like sometimes like we've got this under control.
Yeah.
With Alonso, I always felt that. I always felt like we're all right.
It's interesting. It's a really good shout. I remember listening to Ray Wilkins speak, and he said when he was at Chelsea coach with Mourinho and all those guys, when they used to come to Anfield, they knew what Gerrard was going to do. They knew what Torres was going to do. But the man they had the plan for was Alonso, because he didn't need 2 touches. He could take out your entire team with 1 touch. And sitting in a deep lying position, we'll get onto it a little bit later. I reckon you've got someone that was league up front, which he would have just been absolutely delighted to be sitting behind spraying balls in for those guys, wouldn't he? So I'm a massive Alonso fan, which makes me now a little bit of a Borussia Mönchengladbach fan by the fact that he's going to go there and be a manager. And I say that without any shame, because I genuinely adore that guy's football and his basic.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm with you on that one. It's a great call. So left side of the midfield, narrow.
So again, what I've done here is I'd want it to be a little bit more fluid, this, because I'll tell you who it is, but I want the both of them to be able to do this job, and I think more one than the other will do a little bit more of the, obviously, putting your foot in. But left side, although I want him all over, would be McManaman.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's the out ball, and he's the guy you give the ball to when you want to carry it 30, 40 yards.
So yeah, he's an outlet, isn't he? And I think with regards to the space he get as well, would be, he'd be devastating. Putting a team together and not have McManaman feels a little bit like it'd be weird, because he was so because of the profile of play he was usual, his style. Like you said, think of players that I've seen since or before that were like McManaman in terms of how a lot of it he didn't seem to. He did cover loads of ground and he done loads of running, but you didn't see it. He's able to move out. So yeah, he'd be a must, and obviously for all the reasons I said, I think he's absolutely brilliant.
Probably one of the most naturally gifted and fit footballers we've ever had. Because you talk about in the modern game availability. I don't ever really recall Steve McManaman being injured.
No, not for. I mean, he may have done, but not from.
Can anyone in this pod think of any time he spent any time on the bench? Because I can't.
No. He certainly didn't have any major injuries. I can't remember him being out for any length of time.
Oh, no.
No, and I appreciate the things you said about him. He was a special footballer, and I don't begrudge him his move to play with Zidane at Real Madrid either, mate, because for any footballer, the opportunity to go and play with Zidane and the Brazilian Ronaldo, that must be insane. That must be absolutely ridiculous.
And by the way, he more than held his own, like we spoke about, in terms of his Madrid career. It wasn't, it's nothing to be scoffed at. He went and won a European Cup, scored in the final, was man of the match. Like that boss, certainly, being a Liverpool lad, you know what I mean?
I think he won 2, I think he won 2 while he was there. But
did, yeah.
Like you say, he more than held his own, so you're quite right. You look at the other guy that went there, Owen, who did really set the world on fire. He had a good scoring record, don't get me wrong, but they never took to him in the way they took to McManaman. No. McManaman would have had them on the edge of the seat at the Bernabeu, wouldn't he, when he picked the ball?
I think it was more to do with the type of player, the flair he had. I think Michael Owen, he'd had his couple of injuries. I think Michael Owen was becoming more and more of a, lack of a, I don't think he was quite this yet, but more and more of a poacher. By the time he was at Madrid, I think he'd lost his little yard of pace, and he having to adapt his game.
Agree. And if you ever get the chance to listen to his interview where he talks about that,
I've seen it.
Get his hammy off the bone, and he knew from that moment on he could never trust himself to open up and go through the gears again. So on the right side, Naro, who have you gone for on the right side?
Steven Gerrard, Liverpool's best ever player.
I can't. Right up there, him and Kenny again, isn't it?
Well, no, we had this conversation with my dad, and I was talking to him today. I said about doing it, and he said, my dad always said, I never thought I could say anything. He said, but the time that's gone on, and obviously that, being a little bit more analytical about it, I think what, for me anyway, again, I see ugly, you know what I mean? But from what I've seen and what I understand, the outweigher for me it's firstly the argument of why Gerrard's better than Gerrard is because there's no way you can tell me anyone of a top class central mid, anyone else in the world could go to full back at extra time and nullify. So that's the first one of why I think Gerrard's the best. But also he played and carried a lot of the time at 180. Whereas I think Dalglish had the luxury of always being a ball.
Yeah.
When you look at it, I think if you do, I know it's hard to do this, but if you were to put Dalglish in the teams that Gerrard played in and ask him to carry the team the way Gerrard did, I don't think we'd do it. I don't think we'd win the trophies we'd won. And that's not obviously it's not discredit Dalglish. I just think you've got to take account all factors. It's the argument as well why I say about the Scholes and the Lampards. You put Scholes, and again, there's no discredit that they're boss players, they're players. If you were to put them in that team, that Liverpool team, we wouldn't have half the trophies we have. That's it.
Fair comment. I mean, I look at Gerrard and I think you sat in a computer game and you made a perfect footballer, and you gave the centre midfielder 8 different things to do: shooting, running, passing, defending, attacking, all of that stuff. Gerrard ticks every box. I don't know another centre midfielder that even gets close to ticking every box. And you can go on the internet anytime you like and look Steven Gerrard quotes by fellow professionals. Some of them, like Kaka and Zidane, who I think Zidane's amazing as a player. As a coach, that's a different story. But he even come out and said, even now, he shows Tony Cruz and Luka Modric videos of Steven Gerrard and says, I want you to be more like this. What can you tell those guys? They've won everything the game has to offer, but the Ballon d'Or and everything. And you've got your manager saying to him, this is the yardstick. And he said, you've probably seen this one, and if you have, forgive me. He said that he didn't get the recognition he deserved when he was at the top of his game. Was he the best centre midfielder in the world at that time? Yes, he probably was. That's coming from Zidane, who played with some of the finest footballers the world's ever seen. So that's a tremendous pick, mate. And on the right-hand side, where he was a bit of a marauder in his early days, he'd be compliment your other 2 guys you've already got there quite well. So, go on.
Well, like I said as well, I do feel like I still like the young Gerrard getting about the pitch as well. So I would give a license to still move about a little bit and not be down to that that narrow right side. I feel like he'd probably just have to cover McManaman when McManaman was wandering around over to the left, to the right. They'd have to just come over a little bit. You know what I mean? But I think that'd work. I think if you can
the Gerrard that bombed through and scored against Alaves. You can see him come down that right side. Okay, so into your advanced midfield role, this will be interesting because I thought you were going to put Stevie G there, so you've done me. So we'll see what you go with now.
Well, this is someone sitting behind the striker, but I feel like the reason I've done this is because of kind of his way of linking up. Is Dalglish. So I know, in terms of his goals, he got goals. I don't think he was as prolific as some of the other strikers we've had. But obviously his link up and his intelligence, someone dropping little keeper. I think he'd be a great foil to the front 2.
You nearly told us there, didn't you? I agree. Absolutely tremendous footballer. What a footballing brain. So sticking him in behind the front 2 would be really clever. I think he'd get a lot out of Gerrard coming down the right hand side.
Yeah.
Not a bad team, this, mate. I'll give you credit for that. You've thought about this, and you're doing all right. We could sit here all night and throw superlatives at Dalglish. It's all been said before. Not just the fact that what a player he was, but he's my footballing hero. The way that he conducted himself and held the city together after Hillsborough. I know this is a football pod, but I can never talk about Dalglish without talking about the way the man is and what he means to the football club.
Mm-hmm.
He is Mr. Liverpool for me. He is that club personified in a human being. So I think I don't think there's much more to say than it is other than that's a damn fine pick, mate. So right, it was one of your front men.
Again, I think what I was looking at is the way we are now is kind of having a little bit of fluidity and whatnot, being able to kind of interchange and be a menace to defences really, and that would be the first one would be Luis Suarez.
Yeah, has to be. Technically the best footballer we've ever had.
Yeah, talent and ability wise, I think there's no argument.
Yeah, absolute genius, but what a knobhead. And you forgive him, it's in your shirt, the Liverpool shirt, you forgive all the little things he does, all the little dives, all the little gestures. When he turned up at Anfield in a Barcelona shirt, mate, I hated him. I hated every fibre of that man for that game.
But weirdly enough, after the game, because we won, I loved him again for it. I was like, that's him. That's him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
At the time, I was like, oh. But then when the final whistle goes, you go back and you recall Luis Suarez just wants to win at all costs, and you've got to just take your hat off to that, haven't you?
He admits to playing with irritation, so he's irritated for the whole game. Irritated because his teammate lost the ball. Irritated because he's lost the ball. When someone tells you that, you can see it straight away, can't you?
That's why he bites people. That's it. It must be that. No, but it must be if you've got that answer. It must be. Do you know what I mean that genuinely? I know it's funny, but it's like if you're playing on the edge like that. You know what I mean?
I think you're right. Whilst we're on the subject of Suarez, he's been linked with us as a free transfer in the summer. Personally speaking, I would rather remember him for what he was, not what he's going to be because he's 35. What's your thoughts? Would you have him back?
I don't know. Well, put it this way. If you're going to get him back for the season and we're going to sell Origi, I'd much prefer Suarez on the bench than Origi.
Oh, you put it like that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
When you put it like that, mate, yeah, absolutely.
He's not coming back as a starter, so you can put him on the bench.
Listen, Ken, I'd swap Origi for Ian right now. Do you know what I mean?
That's what I mean. But I can't see it happening myself. But if there was any chance of it happening, I'd have no issue if he was coming and he was going to sit on the bench and be a little bit amused for the last half an hour. Yeah,
fair play, mate. And you know what? We're lucky to have seen him. That goal against Norwich, I think it's the hat-trick goal. It sits up base by and puts across it, and it goes in the far corner, and he runs back to the touchline. You actually think he's going to explode because he has no idea what to do with himself, and he can't believe what's happening. That's the most joyous sight I've ever seen in football. That expression and that body language, mate, is why we go to watch football matches, isn't it?
100%. And then when you see that goal. See, what's brilliant about Suarez is that it was the ingenuity of his play that really is like so engrossing to any fan, really. Obviously, if he plays for Liverpool and you support United, regardless, forgetting the bits aside, what annoys you is it's so engrossing, but he's not your player. So people wouldn't admit that, but even Evertonians watching someone do that on a pitch and then realising, he plays for Liverpool, that's annoying to you. But it's that made him so interesting to it. And it's like, because the thing with Suarez is, obviously, ability-wise, he had that in as well. But it's the ingenuity of doing it in the moment and then going, what have I just done? What have I just done?
Natural. Totally unplanned and totally natural. I mean, South Americans play the ball at your legs and rely on the rebound to take it past you. It's amazing to watch. Messi does it. It's amazing to watch.
Yeah.
So great shout. And then obviously your final pick, the guy that plays alongside him. I kind of hope you say a name now, and if you do, I'll be main up. So who's he going to do?
I don't want to disappoint, but it has to be at this point, Salah.
Salah. Okay, I wouldn't have picked Salah, and that wasn't what I thought you were going to say, Robbie Fowler. But
no, well, listen,
Salah's a good chat with.
No. Listen, it was a tough one, really. But I think Fowler for me would have been more nostalgic. I think, and part of the reason Salah's in is because Salah does not. He will only get the credit he deserves once he's gone.
Correct.
He does not get the credit he deserves currently. Now, I'm not saying he's underrated by Liverpool fans, but there's this kind of, it's weird, and I feel like I don't know when it come about. This just kind of like expectancy that Salah's just gonna be unbelievable, and like, oh yeah, it's like that kind of, yeah, he's boss. We know he's boss. And it's like, no, mate, you're not taking it in properly. Look at the actual
numbers.
The numbers, it's mental.
They're insane, aren't they?
But I think, you know the way, this is the maddest comparison ever. But I said it to my mum and dad, you know when FaceTime first come about, look what us now, right? But when FaceTime first come about, my mum and dad were like, oh yeah, we'll do FaceTime. And I was saying to my mum and dad, right, bear in mind, the era you grew up in, you are just taking this in your stride and not going, wait a minute, we can actually on the phone and look at each other wherever we are. Like, what I mean, it just becomes, oh yeah, this is normal. But it's like, no, it's not normal, mate. These numbers are a farce.
Yeah, they are.
And I just think, like, oh yeah, this is Salah. It's like, no.
No, it's not. You're right. You are right. It's interesting to get people spilling it. I mean, when he does retire from the Premier League or moves on from the Premier League, we have conversations on Sky or whatever, and it's about who's the greatest forward in Premier League history. He's in the conversation.
He has to be. He has to be up there. And the other thing I'd said, and I always use this, I remember my brother when he first came and he had the mad first season, numbers-wise. My brother was like, no, but he's not as good as Suarez. And I actually, I don't think he is as good as Suarez. But there's a counter-argument here. There's times where, most of the time, Suarez comes off the pitch absolutely done in. Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you look at Salah, he looks like he could play another game.
Yeah.
And I feel like the difference is it feels a little bit like, and again, this is no way discrediting Suarez, it feels like the game becomes a little bit easier to Salah in terms of what he does. I feel like the beauty of Suarez is that he's absolutely full pelt, 100% committed, and he does all he can in that game. Whereas I feel like it's just a little bit more natural to Salah, the game.
Yeah, I can see why you'd say that. I think one thing we've all agreed on these pods is that Salah's capable of the sublime, the goal against Chelsea, the snapshot goal against that horrible defeat away at Leicester this year was a great goal. But he's also capable of the ridiculous when he's clean through against Newcastle and doesn't even hit the target. He could score 80 goals a season if he ball his chances away. I was listening to John Barnes on the podcast saying Liverpool create so many chances for Salah, and that's why his numbers are what they are. And you know what? For a guy that's made a bit of a bulldog of himself on Twitter, by the way, with some of his comments, that's pretty much spot on for me.
Well, I mean, I've only just started delving into, but obviously I'd suggest you look. I know you're a problem, but I'm halfway through the and to find out like kind of the specifics of Salah's expected goals, you know, it must be so high because they're all really high value chances that he gets, or loads of them are. That, as you say, he does often spin. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But reading that, I mean, that's a belter book, by the way, guys. If you want a little delve into that, I mean, I'm only just touching the surface with it, but what you're saying there is there will be so many high value chances that Salah gets that he's not taking. Do you know what I mean? But yeah,
his numbers are silly. They're just ridiculous. They stand up against anybody's numbers. Anybody you care to name, they stand up against them, don't they?
That's what I mean, and I do think it's just a little bit taken for granted. I think that's probably the best way of putting it. I feel like Salah at this point is just taken for granted. Yeah, it's Salah.
Yeah, because we refer to him as the four-season wonder now because the stuff that was said when we did the pod, we actually put down as a four-season wonder. So we've got Alisson in goal, Robbo at left back, Trent at right back, Jockey and Van Dijk as your centre halves, Alonso sitting in front, supplying Manaman to the left, Gerrard to the right, Dalglish behind Salah and Suarez. Okay, that's a stupidly good team, mate. I have to say, it's unreal, and you just wouldn't lose a game, would you? You've obviously given that some thought, mate. So thanks for that. It's really good to get that. And there's quite a few of the players that the last guy didn't pick, but there's also some differences in there. So it's good to get people's individual takes on that. So thanks for coming on and doing that. It's really cool.
I think it's got Scouse heart as well. There's a few Scouses in there.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. I hadn't thought of that, to be fair, but yeah, that's it. So it has a bit. So you know what? That's actually probably the secret ingredient and component of that team is you've still got enough of them in there that really, that really want to win. You know what I mean? Like, that as good as some players are, their allegiance isn't Liverpool. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. We can talk about this. As good as Mane and Salah are, and we'll talk about the future for those guys. They're both quite ambassadorial for their own countries.
Yeah.
And I genuinely believe if Real Madrid came knocking in the summer and Liverpool accepted it, Salah would take $350 grand a week purely because he sent 200 grand at home to build schools and hospitals and regenerate his hometown in Egypt. And that's massive. That's what and Mane's the same. And Mane's got a phone with a cracked screen, for God's sake. You know what I mean? That's how unimportant material things are for Mane. So it's one of them. Those guys will leave at some point, and they might go for big money in terms of transfer fees and wages.
Well, I do feel like, regardless of whether we sign big in the summer, I do feel like this may be the last full season of them three playing up front together. By the way,
I agree. I think Jota's really putting pressure on Bobby at the moment.
Yeah. And then I do feel like we've already talked about trying to sign another attacker. I don't know whether it's just going to be supplement or whether you want to try and bring someone big. I know the absolute dreamland rumours aren't going away, but I do feel like this season, this summer, this transfer window is going to be really interesting in terms of how we kind of progress and evolve again, because as we're a top side now. Before that, we've always been now we're a top side, so you've got to start to evolve again. I feel like there's going to have to be one summer at least where you walk out somewhere. You know what I mean? As much
Do you think we will? Do you think we will this summer, Kent? Do you think we'll go big this summer?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I really don't know. But I do feel like, as much as Michael Edwards gets absolutely rightly so applauded for the work he does, at some point you're gonna have to go. We're gonna need to spend the way we did with Van Dijk, I guess. And I know that was I know that was offset with the we knew we'd sold Coutinho basically, but I think you're gonna have to, aren't you? You're gonna have to at some point go. We're gonna have to spend. Saying that though, there is a counter kind of narrative to this. We always seem to hear the money's there if the right player's available.
Well, you wait for them. And the thing is, by all accounts, when they did the stats, because it's all done by stats to fit in the system these days, it's not like, I kind of like that player, I'll go and sign, and they have to fit in with the dynamics of what the team needs to do. By all accounts, Klopp wasn't overly keen on Salah because he hadn't seen him for himself. But when they came back and gave him the numbers, they said that's what he does, that's his recovery rate, there his runs, that's his intensity, that's how much ground he covers. He knows when to run and when not to run. He kind of fitted into the system. It's that scientific these days. I agree with you, what you said earlier in the pod, mate. I think there's a plan. There always is a plan. There has to be a plan. I think they know what they're doing. If the likes of Ronaldo leave and Salah's interview with Marca, the Spanish newspaper, has been considered by the club, and the journalist told us this, as an agitation for a contract, and the club aren't interested in having a conversation about contracts at the moment. So that will be an interesting permutation come the end of the season, I suppose.
Well, that's it.
Mate, thanks for coming on. An hour and 15 minutes of your time. It's been a pleasure, just as it was last time. and we'll ask you to come back when we do a transfer window thing, because you've got a good sort of opinion on things. It'd be good to get you back to make sure it's not the last time we talk to you. Been a pleasure, absolute gent. The team was amazing as well, mate. So thanks for coming on. We really enjoyed that.
Boys, thoroughly enjoyed myself. I can talk for footy all night, so yeah.
Well, we'll have you back on, mate. Make sure we have you back on.
Definitely have you back on, Kent.
Sound. Have a good one, boys. Nice one.
All right, buddy. Take care of yourself. Good luck with your auditions, yeah.
Thank you very much. See you later.
Take care, mate. Ta-ra. What do you think?